There are moments when, without any logical explanation, life saves you just in time. An unexpected delay prevents an accident. A sudden intuition makes you change direction, or a silent voice whispers for you to wait. And thanks to that invisible gesture, everything turns out well. Carl Jung said that what we call chance is often synchronicity, the way the unconscious and the universe communicate to protect us. But there is something even deeper. There are people who carry a special gift of divine protection, a silent force that walks beside them and acts even when they are not searching for it. Perhaps you have already felt it. Episodes when you think the worst could have happened, but did not. Or coincidences so precise they seem impossible. When this kind of experience repeats itself with astonishing consistency, it is not just good luck. It could be the sign of a gift of protection your soul has carried from the beginning. Today, we will explore those mysterious traces. We will discover how divine protection manifests itself and why, if you possess this gift, the universe places around you a net of care that defies all logic. Stay with me until the end, because by recognizing these signs, you will be able to understand the greater purpose that opens every time life protects you in an inexplicable way. There comes a moment when your life begins to move with a delicate precision that confuses the mind. It is not mere coincidences or a streak of luck. It is an invisible architecture placing each piece to keep you safe without you even asking. The first sign that you possess a gift of divine protection arises right there, in that mysterious coordination that anticipates risks and neutralizes them before they appear. You may perceive it as a spontaneous decision that changes your path at the last second, an impulse to delay closing the door that prevents an accident, or a pause that keeps an uncomfortable encounter in the past. The extraordinary thing is that you do not feel fear or urgency. Everything happens with a natural flow you only understand afterward. Jung explained that the collective unconscious can connect with what is about to unfold, but in this case, the sensation goes far beyond ordinary intuition. It is as if a greater consciousness were reading the map of your destiny in real time and, without disturbing your free will, redirecting the currents that could harm you. This kind of protection does not always appear in dramatic gestures. It often hides in the ordinary. A traffic light turning red just when you are about to cross, distracted. A message arriving in time to prevent a rushed choice. An idea appearing suddenly that changes the sequence of an ordinary day. Each detail seems minor until you realize the whole picture has kept you safe. When you begin to recognize this pattern, something profound ignites within. You no longer live bound by fear, but with the confidence that there is a protective design accompanying your path. It is a serene security, different from simple hope, a certainty felt in the body as an atmosphere of shelter surrounding you. Perhaps you have already experienced moments like this, that sudden decision that avoided a problem, that delay that ended up saving you from something you later discovered. Observe them closely. They could be the first proofs that within you lies a gift of divine protection, a silent bond the universe has woven so you can arrive whole at each stage of your destiny. When this first sign unfolds with greater strength, its precision becomes almost astonishing. No longer just unexpected changes of direction. It seems as if life itself organizes with a wisdom that anticipates several moves ahead. You begin to notice even your thoughts synchronizing with the movements around you. You think of calling someone, and that person writes to you first. You remember something lost, and it appears in an impossible place. You plan to go out, and a sudden notice makes you wait just long enough to avoid a complicated situation. They are tiny details, but repeated, they form a pattern so coherent it challenges the very idea of chance. Unlike fleeting intuitions, these signals arrive wrapped in calm. There is no shock or anxiety, only a soft clarity, as if reality whispered the best choice without interrupting your freedom. That peace is essential to the protection because it allows you to clearly hear what truly matters. Jung said that when the unconscious aligns with a wider reality, a transcendent function emerges capable of uniting the visible with the invisible. What you experience is precisely that union, your consciousness linked with a greater intelligence, a dialogue preventing you from arriving at the wrong place at the wrong time. Those who possess this gift often discover that even apparent setbacks bring hidden blessings. The meeting cancelled at the last minute, the train you miss, the mistake forcing you to change plans. Each event later reveals itself as the exact piece to keep you safe and lead you to a better opportunity. If you recognize in your life that silent pattern correcting your path effortlessly, understand that it is not mere coincidence. It is a net of divine protection acting through perfect synchronicities, a clear sign that your path is safeguarded and that you possess a special gift to walk in confidence, even in the midst of uncertainty. There is another way this gift of divine protection becomes evident, and it arises from deep within your inner world. It is a living silence appearing even in the midst of noise, a calm not dependent on external circumstances that acts as an invisible barrier against all that could harm you. Sometimes it manifests as a peace that arrives unexpectedly, just when everything seems to fall apart, while others are unsettled. You feel a benevolent presence stopping the storm inside, giving you clarity to act without rushing. It is not coldness nor indifference. It is a stillness that protects, that lets you see what others cannot, and choose without fear. This sign is not mental, it is felt in the body. The rhythm of the heart grows steady. Breathing becomes deep. Thoughts quiet down, even in moments of real danger. A part of you remains in an inexplicable state of balance, as if a greater force absorbed the storm before it reached you. Jung spoke of a luminous function of the unconscious, a contact with the sacred that feels like the inner presence of something vast and protective. Whoever possesses this gift recognizes in that serenity an unmistakable sign. You are not alone. There is an invisible intelligence accompanying every step. Over time, this protective peace becomes an infallible compass. When a choice pulls you away from your purpose, the calm vanishes. When you take the right path, it returns immediately. It is a guidance system needing no words, because its language is the certainty only felt when the soul walks safely. This second sign acts as a wall of light within the heart, without the need to fight. It keeps you away from places, situations, and ties that could wound you. And at the same time, it opens the inner space for the true opportunity to arrive. Those who experience it discover that authentic protective strength does not always fight. Sometimes it simply dissolves the danger before it forms. When this second sign deepens, its presence becomes unmistakable. It is no longer just a moment of calm amidst noise. It turns into an atmosphere accompanying you everywhere, as if an invisible sphere of light traveled with you. Even on the heaviest days, you notice an inner space no worry can invade. The surprising thing is that this peace does not disconnect you from reality. On the contrary, it makes you sharper. You can act quickly when needed, but without the haste that clouds judgment. The right words emerge at the exact moment. Difficult decisions resolve without hesitation, and what for others is chaos becomes for you a stage where everything finds its place. With time, you discover that this protective serenity is also a warning radar. When something does not belong to your path, an agreement, a journey, even a conversation, that perfect calm suddenly disappears. It is as if an inner door closed, telling you, do not go there. Just a second of attention is enough to understand that the absence of peace is a signal of protection in action. Jung described these experiences as contact with a broader psychic reality, guiding the person toward individuation, the full unfolding of their being. In this gift, that reality expresses itself as a protective field, anticipating what your awareness cannot yet see, while respecting your freedom of choice. Those who live this second sign also notice their environment reacting differently. Tensions dissolve just by entering a room. Conflicts lose intensity. Agitated people lower their tone without knowing why. It is the frequency of your calm creating balance outside of you. If you recognize that peace remaining even when everything shakes, that inner compass turning off or on to guide you, understand that it is not merely self-control, it is the mark of a gift of divine protection, a sign that your life is surrounded by a silent defense, allowing you to walk with confidence through any scenario. When this second sign consolidates within, inner peace ceases to be an occasional state and becomes a true organ of perception. It not only calms, it informs, functioning as a living current, translating into precise sensations what your mind cannot yet name. Imagine you are offered a project that on the surface seems perfect. The details, the people, the benefits, everything looks aligned, but as you approach that decision, something inside grows opaque, as if a subtle mist covered the clarity of your awareness. There is no argument to explain it, simply the usual serenity is absent. Whoever possesses this gift learns to recognize that strange silence as a sacred no, a soft but categorical warning, pulling them away from paths that could mislead or harm them. The same happens in moments of imminent danger. You may be about to start a journey, sign an agreement, enter a place, and suddenly a heavy stillness stops your impulse. If you decide to delay, soon you discover that this pause spared you from a problem. Sometimes the risk is visible, an accident, a loss. Other times, it is just a detour that would have drained your time and energy. In any case, the signal works as a wall of light. It does not confront. It does not shout. It simply closes the door to what is not meant for you. As you grow familiar with this language, you realize it does not depend on external circumstances. You can be in the middle of a crowd and still feel that protective field as if you were the only inhabitant of a secret space. Even in tense environments, difficult meetings, arguments, places of heavy pressure, that peace acts like a shield that absorbs the emotional impact, keeping your energy intact. Carl Jung spoke of the importance of integrating the unconscious to reach the self, that point where personality and the spiritual plane are unified. The serenity of this second sign is precisely the living manifestation of that self, an unshakable center that remains balanced while the surface of life changes its rhythm. It is not mere self-control. It is a dimension of being already participating in the eternal. With time, this continuous state influences how the world responds to you. Restless people find in your presence an invitation to lower their voice. Hostile environments soften the moment you arrive. Even ongoing arguments lose intensity when you step in, sometimes without saying a word. It is as if the frequency of your calm sent out a wave of reordering, making reality slowly adopt the balance that dwells within you. There are days when this protection feels almost physical. You might describe it as a soft halo of energy surrounding you, or as a warmth in the chest, a quiet expansion that recalls the presence of something infinitely benevolent. Whoever has felt this safeguard knows it is not their own doing. Peace has density, almost weight, and it marks the difference between reacting with fear or acting with clarity. It also transforms your relationship with time. The unforeseen events that used to upset you, a delay, a cancellation, now appear as providential adjustments. Instead of irritation, a curious trust arises. If this happens, it means something better is being prepared. That attitude, born of repeated experience, opens space for unexpected opportunities that only arrive when you stop fighting the flow of life. Those who cultivate this second sign discover that their true strength is neither speed nor aggressive defense, but the ability to remain at the center of themselves. There, in that still point, divine protection operates more effectively than any calculated plan. What once demanded effort or strategy now resolves itself through the sole force of inner coherence. If in your own experience you recognize moments when peace became both guide and shield, when sudden stillness changed critical decisions, or when your mere presence calmed tense situations, understand that you are living the fullness of this second sign. It is the evidence that you carry a gift of divine protection, a silent alliance with the force that sustains the universe, able to guard every one of your steps, while your destiny unfolds with perfect accuracy. The third sign that you carry a gift of divine protection appears in an even more mysterious way. It is the capacity to perceive symbolic warnings in dreams and states of inspiration, a prophetic language of the soul that anticipates events. Perhaps you have noticed that suddenly your dreams acquire extraordinary clarity. Scenes that once vanished on waking remain engraved with precision, as if you had lived a real episode. These are not ordinary dreams. They contain powerful symbols, landscapes of intense luminosity, dialogues remembered word for word, which days or weeks later coincide with actual events. Sometimes the warning appears as simple but insistent images: a bridge collapsing, a road that diverts, an object catching fire. Other times, as direct messages, a brief phrase that resonates with power, a name that appears with clarity. The essential point is that when these symbols return to memory, they bring with them a sense of certainty. You do not need complicated interpretation. You know they are warning or guiding you. This gift is not limited to the night. During the day, fleeting visions or sudden intuitions may arise while you read, converse, or walk. It feels as if a part of you were reading reality at a higher level, sending signals at the exact moment. What distinguishes these perceptions from a passing thought is the emotional power with which they impose themselves, accompanied by a peace that confirms their authenticity. Carl Jung devoted much of his work to studying dreams as messengers of the collective unconscious, a network of meanings uniting all souls. In those who carry this gift, that network does not simply reveal the repressed, but functions as a system of protection, anticipating situations, suggesting decisions, even diverting dangers before they materialize. With time, you learn to dialogue with these symbols. You begin to record your dreams, to recognize recurring signs, and to notice the precision with which the warnings are fulfilled. Each experience strengthens your trust that a divine intelligence is communicating with you through the language your soul understands best. Images, metaphors, visions. This kind of protection does not replace your choices, it illuminates them. It gives you the chance to act consciously before risk appears, or to be in the right place at the exact time when a decisive opportunity is about to unfold. Those who live this third sign feel their dream life and waking life merge into a single continuum. The night ceases to be passive rest and becomes a territory of revelation and protection, a space where divine guardianship works while you sleep, handing you each dawn the keys to walk safely. When this third sign deepens, dreams and inner visions cease to be mere nocturnal episodes and become an authentic territory of revelation, a space where the universe and your unconscious converse in a language of images, symbols, and emotions that protect and guide you. You begin to notice that certain symbols repeat with unsettling precision. It may be an animal that appears again and again, a luminous landscape, a door of a specific color, or a melody you hear in different dreams. At first, they seem like coincidences, but over time, you perceive that each appearance carries a very concrete message. A bridge opening may announce a safe opportunity. A staircase collapsing may warn of a path you must not follow. These signs are exact alerts designed for your consciousness to recognize them, even in waking state. On awakening, the information does not dissipate like an ordinary dream. It remains anchored in memory, accompanied by a sense of urgency or peace, depending on the nature of the message. Many times, only after several days, you discover that symbol corresponded to a real situation about to manifest. The accuracy is so striking, you cannot attribute it to chance alone. Gradually, the boundary between night and day becomes more permeable as you go about daily activities. Brief visions or sudden images break through strongly. They may appear in the middle of a conversation, while crossing a street, even at the moment of falling asleep. They are not distractions, but flashes of warning or confirmation arriving exactly when needed. The most astonishing thing is that this flow of symbols works in synchrony with your outer life. If a decision is not right, dreams may become confusing or disturbing. If you are aligned with destiny, dream imagery fills with light, vivid colors, and harmony, offering inner confirmation beyond words. Carl Jung considered dreams a bridge between the individual psyche and the collective unconscious, that ocean of meanings connecting all humanity. When you carry a gift of divine protection, that bridge does not merely reveal archetypes, it functions as a network of early alert, guarding your integrity and preparing you for encounters or decisive choices. Another dimension of this sign is protective creative inspiration. Sometimes protection is not only avoiding danger, but opening new opportunities. A dream may suggest a project, a work, an idea that acts as escape and growth just when an external situation threatened to trap you. Furthermore, the emotional intensity of these experiences is unique. Unlike ordinary dreams, these messages leave such a vivid trace that you can recall minimal details, colors, sounds, exact words weeks or months later, as if you had lived a physical event. Whoever recognizes this third sign also discovers the importance of honoring and recording these messages, keeping a dream journal, meditating upon waking, dedicating minutes to reviewing the images. Everything helps make the dialogue between your soul and divine protection ever clearer and constant. With time, certainty becomes absolute. You realize your inner world is a sanctuary of real communication with the sacred, a space where divine guardianship works actively to safeguard your life and guide you toward the opportunities destined for you. This third sign reminds you that even while you sleep, your destiny is not left unprotected. Each luminous dream, each insistent symbol, each vision later fulfilled is proof that a greater intelligence watches over your path, keeping you safe and leading you step by step toward the purpose your soul came to fulfill. The fourth sign that you carry a gift of divine protection manifests in a very subtle dimension of daily life, an innate ability to deflect harmful energies before they reach you, as if your mere presence created an invisible field of immunity. It is not about raising barriers or practicing mental defenses. It is something deeper, a natural magnetism that keeps away whatever does not resonate with your vibration. Conflicting people withdraw without apparent reason. Tense situations dissolve before touching you. Projects that could entangle you stop without your intervention. You may notice it in everyday encounters. An appointment that seemed inevitable cancels unexpectedly. A group reorganizes in a way that keeps you out of a toxic environment, or a complicated connection loses strength until it disappears. None of this happens with drama. It simply moves away as if life were cleaning on your behalf. Jung spoke of protective synchronicity, events that seem accidental but act as guardians of destiny. When you carry this gift, that synchronicity becomes constant. Everything that could drain you meets an invisible obstacle and diverts in time. The most interesting part is you do not need to remain in constant alert. This protection works while you sleep, while you work, even when you forget to think of it. It is a frequency surrounding you like a natural atmosphere, creating a space where energetic attacks, conflicts, and negative influences lose force before reaching you. Sometimes it manifests as an unexpected change in the physical environment, perhaps a noise that makes you leave a room seconds before a minor accident, or a temporary failure preventing you from taking transport at the wrong moment. These twists may seem inconvenient at first, but later you realize they were exact in sparing you from harm. Those who carry this sign gradually experience a growing inner freedom. They no longer depend on constant vigilance or control. They trust that a silent intelligence is caring for their path, a shield of light that operates even in the simplest details. If you recognize in your story this ability for what is not meant for you to drift away without conflict, you may be living the fourth sign, the gift of divine protection that requires no struggle. Its strength lies in a vibration so pure that anything dissonant dissolves before it even approaches. When this fourth sign unfolds fully, you begin to notice that not only do difficult people step aside, but every situation with harmful potential reorganizes itself in your favor. It is as though your destiny carried within it an invisible navigation system that corrects the course of any circumstance that could divert you from your purpose. One day, for instance, you may discover that a project that seemed essential suddenly freezes without explanation. Perhaps in that moment, you feel frustration, but with time, you realize that apparent setback spared you from a commitment that would have drained your energy. In other moments, a simple delay, a cancelled train, or a postponed meeting becomes the exact safeguard you required, shielding you from accidents, material losses, or unhealthy alliances. This gift is not a power to control the world, but a frequency that brings it into harmony. As you learn to live within that vibration, you notice the spaces around you change in quality. A room filled with tension grows lighter when you enter. A group on the verge of conflict finds an unexpectedly conciliatory tone. It is as if the mere coherence of your presence rearranged the invisible dynamics of reality. Carl Jung spoke of luminous energy, that force arising when the unconscious connects with the sacred. Whoever lives this fourth sign carries that energy as a protective field, a halo that shapes circumstances. It is not about domination, but about radiating a silent order that makes chaos impossible. Over time, you perceive that this gift even alters how others perceive you. People with unclear intentions may feel uneasy in your presence without knowing why, while those vibrating in resonance with you experience a natural attraction. The result is a spontaneous selection. Authentic bonds strengthen, while those that could exhaust you lose interest until they fade. Another fascinating dimension of this sign is its capacity for silent prevention. Often, when something unsuitable is about to occur, life deploys small detours that only later you understand. You may forget an important object that forces you to return home, or an unexpected message shifts your schedule. These are minimal gestures that, when seen in perspective, fit precisely into a strategy of protection. The most revealing aspect is that this mechanism acts even when your conscious mind does not request help. You do not need to pray at every instant, nor remain constantly alert. The protective field that emanates from your gift works ceaselessly, like an atmosphere surrounding every step of your path. On the inside, this process awakens a new relationship with trust. You stop living in fear of danger because you learn that what is not meant for you cannot remain in your reality. That certainty allows you to make decisions with courage, to embark on risky projects, to begin journeys, knowing that the same force that orders the universe accompanies you at all times. You also discover that your presence triggers movements of balance beyond your personal life. Tense meetings transform without a word from you. Friendships once distanced come together again in peace. Family conflicts dissolve after a brief encounter. These are not theatrical miracles, but natural adjustments arising from the field of harmony you radiate. If you recognize in your experience that difficulties deactivate effortlessly, that harmful influences withdraw on their own, and that genuine opportunities find their way to you, you are witnessing the essence of this fourth sign. It is proof that you carry a gift of divine protection, operating permanently, a subtle alliance between your energy and a greater intelligence that keeps your destiny safe as you move toward the fullness of your purpose. The fifth sign that you possess a gift of divine protection emerges in the most intimate and transformative territory. The inner certainty that your life is guided by a greater purpose, a conviction that does not depend on external evidence and keeps you at peace even in the most uncertain moments. Unlike previous signs, this one does not manifest in visible coincidences or immediate changes in your environment. It is a profound knowing dwelling at the center of your being. A silent voice reminding you, even in difficulty, that everything happening to you, including the hardest trials, forms part of a perfect plan of protection and growth. You may feel it as a serene strength that does not break. While circumstances shift around you, a clear conviction ignites within. I am on the path that belongs to me. It does not matter if you cannot yet see the exit. You know each step, even the seemingly mistaken one, is used by a higher intelligence to guide you toward the destiny your soul has chosen. This certainty transforms your relationship with fear. The anxieties that once paralyzed you turn into simple signals of adjustment. You no longer ask if life supports you. You live with the trust that divine protection acts within you, not only around you. It is a security that does not depend on immediate results, because its root lies in communion with something eternal. Carl Jung described this state as the union with the self, the sacred nucleus of personality that connects with the whole. When you experience this fifth sign, you feel that center fully awakened. It is not a philosophical idea, but a physical experience, a gentle warmth in the heart, an expansion of breath, the impression that every heartbeat confirms an indestructible alliance between your life and the divine plan. From here onward, your way of making decisions changes radically. You no longer choose from the fear of loss, but from listening to that inner voice that always indicates the next step. Even apparent failures become part of the journey because you know no real mistake can remove you from what is destined for you. This level of trust creates an aura of blessing that others perceive. Those who approach you feel calmer, find guidance without needing long explanations, and often remark that something in your presence gives them strength. It is the manifestation that the protection within you expands and reaches those who share your space. Whoever lives this fifth sign understands that life itself is an act of divine protection. Every door that opens, every delay, every unexpected turn belongs to a design that not only avoids harm, but leads to the complete fulfillment of the soul's mission. There is no chance. Everything is cared for, even silences, even what is not yet visible. If you recognize within yourself that certainty of constant guidance, that peace sustained through all seasons of life, then you are experiencing the highest confirmation of this gift, the fusion between your will and the will of a loving intelligence, accompanying every step of your existence. In the course of these 5 signs, one truth is revealed. When you possess a gift of divine protection, your entire life becomes a work meticulously guided. From the first spark, that higher care expresses itself as an invisible architecture arranging every step before you take it. Everything begins with a secret coordination between your inner being and the unfolding of events. A call arriving at the perfect instant, a delay that saves you, an unexpected phrase that leads you toward a safer path. Nothing is chance. Your unconscious seems to dialogue with a greater intelligence that diverts risks and places each piece so you remain safe. There are no shocks. Everything happens with the naturalness of the inevitable. As this experience becomes familiar, a second dimension reveals itself. You discover within yourself a deep peace not dependent on circumstances. While the environment trembles, a silent center remains intact. It is a stillness that protects you from within, a language of certainty guiding you without words. When something does not belong to your destiny, that calm fades. When you choose rightly, it immediately returns. You learn to trust that invisible compass that lights or withdraws to indicate the safe direction. And again, you confirm with facts that this peace is more than self-control. It is a wall of light keeping you whole. The third manifestation of this gift reveals itself in dreams, visions, and intuitive flashes announcing what is to come. Suddenly, your nights fill with symbols remembered with precision. Bridges, paths, voices repeating until reality takes shape. These are not random images, but messages warning, protecting, and often guiding you toward opportunities you never imagined. This same inspiration can burst into waking life as a clear thought, a confirmed premonition, or a warning arriving just in time. The nocturnal and the diurnal become one territory of guidance and care. Then arises a natural capacity to divert harmful energies before they draw near. You need not fight or confront. People or situations that could hurt you simply dissolve. Meetings are postponed, projects halted, connections that completed their cycle drift away without conflict. What is not meant for you loses strength and falls aside under its own weight. This invisible cleansing creates a space of purity where authentic relationships thrive and true opportunities take root. Finally, this gift culminates in an inner certainty impossible to break. Beyond visible signs, you feel your life is upheld by a greater purpose. Every experience, even the hardest, integrates into a plan that protects and guides. Fears lose their power, decisions arise from trust, and even apparent mistakes reveal themselves as exact movements of a superior intelligence. It is the ultimate confirmation that you do not walk alone. Divine protection not only surrounds you, but dwells in the deepest part of your being, accompanying every heartbeat of your destiny. These 5 intertwined signs show how divine protection is not an isolated episode, but a continuous process acting across all levels: external events, emotions, dreams, relationships, and consciousness itself. To recognize them is to begin living with the certainty that the universe watches over you in every moment, leading you with loving precision toward the fullness you were created for. We have reached the end of this profound journey exploring the 5 signs of the gift of divine protection. If as you listened, you felt these experiences speak of you, trust that intuition. It is no accident you have found this message. Every word resonating within you belongs to the same current that accompanies, guides, and guards you. Allow these revelations to continue maturing in your heart. Return to them whenever needed. Let their echo accompany you in silence. And above all, walk with the certainty that you are never alone. The force protecting your life is already active, even in moments when it seems nothing is happening. If any of these signs beat within your own story, share it in the comments. Your testimony may be the confirmation another soul requires to recognize the presence of their own divine protection. There are moments in life when you feel different, when something deep within you whispers that you don't quite see the world the way others do. You can't fully explain it, and perhaps you've never been able to. It's not something you chose. It simply is. There's a unique lens through which you perceive reality, one that brings meaning to silence and depth to things that seem mundane to others. While people around you overlook subtle details, you feel them intensely. Silence, for you, speaks louder than noise. You sense when someone is in pain, even if they hide it behind a smile. You feel the sorrow of others, as if it were your own, even when they say nothing at all. You didn't ask to be this way. You've just always been this way. Carl Jung once said that special souls are not born in comfort, but are forged in the silent fire of introspection. And maybe that explains it. Maybe that's why, even as a child, you often felt like you didn't belong, like your soul came from another time, another place entirely. While others ran toward the noise, you turned inward. While the world focused on what was outside, you were busy exploring the universe within. And that, too, came with a cost, a deep, often aching loneliness. Not because you were alone, but because you felt that no one else truly understood the way you feel things, the way you are. But that sensitivity of yours, that emotional depth, that way you connect with life, it isn't a weakness. It's not something to hide or fix. It's a signal, a reminder, a sign that within you lives something extraordinary, a soul. And not just any soul, but a soul that perceives more, that knows without being told. A soul that picks up on invisible frequencies, one that feels what others refuse to acknowledge. You carry an ancient truth inside you, one that you might not yet know how to put into words, but it's there, quietly burning in your chest. If you've ever felt like you're too much for the world, too emotional, too intense, too reflective, it's not because there's something wrong with you. It's because the world hasn't yet learned how to hold the depth of souls like yours. But hear this clearly. You are not broken. You are not lost. You are awake. Awake in a world that is still fast asleep. And when a soul awakens, everything around it begins to change, even if it takes time. Having a special soul means everything touches you more deeply, not because you're fragile, but because your sensitivity allows you to see beyond the surface. You don't just notice people's words, you feel their energy, their sadness, their longing. The pain of others doesn't just pass you by, it lives in your heart, as if it were your own. You carry burdens in silence that others are too afraid to name. The world has probably called you too much, told you to toughen up, to stop thinking so much, to stop feeling so deeply. But what they don't understand is that you can't live any other way. And more importantly, you shouldn't. This way of being, this intensity, is not a curse. It's a blessing in disguise. Carl Jung believed that to discover your light, you must face your shadow. And you, with all your depth and complexity, have faced storms within yourself that others can't even begin to comprehend. You've sat in silence, questioning your purpose. You've felt emptiness that clings to your chest. You've asked again and again, what's the point of all this? And still, you're here, searching, asking, feeling. That voice inside you, that's your soul. And not everyone can hear theirs. Many drown it out with noise, with distractions, with pretending. But not you. You've learned to sit in your silence, even when it hurts. You've learned that wounds don't need to be denied. They need to be honored. That pain doesn't take you away from who you are. It returns you to it. Your soul is special because it chose to feel. It chose not to numb itself. It chose to awaken. And yes, that awakening can be painful. It can feel like a lonely road, but it's also sacred. In a world obsessed with escaping inward truths, you chose to go deeper. While others search endlessly for answers in the external world, you closed your eyes and began to ask questions that only the soul can answer. Who am I? What am I here to give? What does it really mean to live authentically? You may not have all the answers yet, but asking those questions, that already sets you apart. It doesn't mean you're lost. It means you're finding your way back to your truth. A special soul isn't defined by what it accomplishes. It's defined by what it transforms. Every time you chose forgiveness over resentment, every time you allowed yourself to cry when the world told you to be strong, every time you opened your heart despite knowing you could get hurt, you were embodying your true power. Your soul doesn't need applause. It doesn't need validation. It vibrates on a different frequency, and though that frequency can sometimes feel isolating, it is never wrong. In fact, it's exactly what this world needs. And even if you've often felt like you don't fit in, the truth is, you're finally beginning to fit into yourself. You weren't born to fit in. You were born to awaken, to transform, to remind others of the parts of themselves they've forgotten. Jung once said, "A life not lived is a disease from which one can die." And you, even if you've hidden, even if you've gone silent at times, know that there's still a life inside you waiting to be lived. A fire that hasn't gone out. A light that, no matter how wounded, refuses to be extinguished. Your soul isn't special just because it feels different. It's special because it carries a mission that often lives beyond words, beyond logic, beyond what the eyes can see. And that mission isn't always grand or loud. Sometimes it's as quiet as choosing love in a moment of anger, as simple as telling the truth when it's easier to stay silent, as beautiful as seeing someone for who they really are when no one else does. Sometimes it's in the most subtle details, in the way you silently accompany someone, in how you listen without judging, in how you hold space for those who have forgotten how to hold themselves, that your true essence shines through. And maybe no one ever applauded you for that. Maybe you've never received recognition, praise, or even a thank you. But your soul doesn't need applause. It doesn't seek validation. It only seeks truth. Because when you have a different kind of soul, you can't follow the paths that others have paved. You grow tired of the noise, of the shallowness, of trying to fit into molds that were never meant for you. You're not drawn to empty gestures or superficial approval. There is something inside of you that has always searched for more, something more authentic, more profound, more deeply your own. And that search hasn't always been easy, because the more awake you become, the more aware you are of how asleep the world really is. You begin to see the contradictions hidden in everyday life, the pain dressed up as success, the fear disguised as ambition, the disconnection passed off as normality. But you can't pretend. You've tried. You've tried to adapt, to fit in, to do what was expected. And yet, something always felt off. There was a silent discomfort, a quiet emptiness, a persistent voice whispering, "This is not your place." That feeling was never a sign of weakness. It was intuition. It was your soul speaking clearly, asking you to return to yourself, to what you truly are, to the part of you that never sold out, that never completely dimmed its light. And there, in the midst of the discomfort, in the space of not knowing, in the feeling of not belonging, your true transformation began. Because special souls are not recognized in easy moments. They are forged in chaos, in doubt, in pain that forces them to look inward. And when you began that inward journey, something changed. You stopped looking for answers outside yourself. You no longer needed others to validate what you felt. You started becoming your own refuge, your own guide, your own steady flame. And in that place, you discovered something powerful. What once hurt you began to open you. What once separated you began to connect you. What once confused you began to reveal truth. Because a soul that has learned to be with itself is a soul no longer afraid of its own light. And that's when everything begins to take on a new meaning. It no longer hurts to be different. You start to honor it. You understand you weren't born to blend in, but to expand. You weren't meant to follow someone else's path, but to carve out your own, to walk where no footsteps existed before. You stop needing to be understood by everyone. Instead, you begin to attract those who can truly see you, not with their eyes, but with their soul. Because real connection isn't based on appearances, but on frequency. And when you elevate yours, everything around you begins to shift. That's one of the greatest gifts of a special soul. It awakens others simply by existing. You don't need to do big, loud things to change the world. Sometimes, just by how you look, how you listen, how you are, you begin to light up places that once only knew shadow. And not everyone can do that, because to reach that point, you had to fall. You had to break. You had to ask yourself the questions others were too afraid to speak aloud. And you chose not to stay in your wound. You chose to go through it, to turn it into understanding, into compassion, into a strength that doesn't scream but stands tall. People who have walked through their own personal hell with awareness are the ones who later walk with the greatest humility. They no longer need to prove anything. They no longer impose themselves because they know who they are. And that truth, even when unspoken, is deeply felt. Your soul is special because it doesn't settle for mere survival. It longs to live fully, deeply, truthfully, with purpose. And that's why anything that isn't real feels unbearably heavy now. Empty conversations, forced connections, externally imposed goals. They no longer fit in your journey. Not because you think you're better, but because you've learned to honor your energy. And when you allow yourself to be, without filters, without masks, life begins to respond in a different way. You no longer chase after anything. You no longer try to convince or prove your worth. You begin to attract what vibrates with your essence, and you let go, without fear, of what you once tried so hard to hold on to. Because now you know, nothing real is forced, and nothing meant for you can be lost. At this point in your path, you no longer seek to belong. You seek truth, presence, peace. And in that process, something subtle but profound begins to awaken inside you. You reconcile with your past, not because you deny it, but because you now see it as sacred ground, the terrain that prepared you to awaken. You forgive what once hurt, not by pretending it didn't matter, but by understanding it deeply, by looking through the eyes of compassion. You begin to feel gratitude, not just for the good things, but for what made you stronger, wiser, more human. Your soul is special, truly, profoundly special, because it chose to awaken in a world that often prefers to remain asleep. It didn't settle for the superficial, but was drawn, almost instinctively, to the essential. And yes, perhaps that has made you feel alone many times. But that solitude was never a punishment. It was a preparation. It was a sacred space of silence, so you could finally hear what no one else could teach you, your own voice. Now you understand that everything you felt wasn't an overreaction. It was sensitivity. Your intensity wasn't a burden. It was a compass, guiding you in ways others couldn't see. The way you love, deeply, differently, isn't a flaw. It's precisely the kind of love this world desperately needs. So don't change. Don't dim your light. Don't hide yourself. This world already has too many copies. But your soul is one of a kind. When the soul truly awakens, it doesn't happen in a burst of fireworks. It's not a sudden flash of enlightenment or a dramatic epiphany. It's a quiet, intimate, almost invisible process on the outside. But inside, it's fiercely transformational. It's as if the broken, forgotten, or dormant pieces of you slowly begin to find each other again, as if something you've been waiting for, maybe even your entire life, finally starts to align. And in that moment, you realize you can no longer live the same way. You can't engage in shallow conversations anymore. You can't stay in jobs that dull your spirit. You can't maintain connections that only survive out of habit. Your soul becomes more selective, not out of arrogance, but from a genuine need to protect its energy. You begin to see that you're not here to be drained. You're here to be expressed, to flourish, deeply, unapologetically. Often, the most special souls are the ones who have endured the greatest trials, not because they deserved it, but because they needed to move through the heaviness in order to remember who they truly are. Some truths only reveal themselves in the dark. Some understandings are born only when the world you once knew collapses, because it's in that moment, when there's nothing left to hold on to, that you finally discover you were what you were looking for all along. Everything you longed for was already within you, waiting patiently to be seen. You begin to see life through new eyes. What once felt like chaos now feels like movement, necessary, purposeful. What once felt like loss now feels like liberation. You begin to trust the process, even if you don't fully understand it. You learn to stop chasing after what walks away. You stop begging for what doesn't flow. There's a quiet wisdom within you that starts to guide your steps. And even when certainty is absent, your soul knows. And that's enough. The modern world will often ask you to be logical, productive, predictable. But your soul doesn't move in straight lines or follow clocks. Your soul breathes in cycles. It dances in spirals. It speaks in symbols. And it expresses itself through intuition. When you stop resisting its nature, everything becomes clearer. Not easier, but more real. Over time, you realize that true fulfillment doesn't come from meeting the world's expectations. It comes from being radically true to what your inner self whispers to you in silence. And that whisper, though invisible to others, transforms everything. It changes the way you walk through life, the way you choose, the way you create, the way you love. Your special soul didn't come here to be understood by everyone. It came to remind you that you don't need the world's approval to be wholly, fully yourself. The most powerful transformation of having a special soul isn't what you achieve outwardly, but what begins to unfold inwardly. There comes a moment when you realize that real evolution isn't measured by awards, titles, or recognition, but by how well you learn to be with yourself, how you speak to yourself when no one is listening, how you hold yourself up when no one else is there, how you stay loyal to your truth, even when it means disappointing others. That inner loyalty doesn't arrive overnight. It's born after many mistakes, after countless moments where you betrayed yourself just to be liked, to fit in, to hold on to the little you thought you had. But a special soul can't stay away from itself for too long. It can try. It can distract itself. It can even get completely lost for years. But eventually, the moment comes, the one where you can no longer lie to yourself. And when that moment comes, everything changes. You stop chasing what once obsessed you. You realize that many of your goals weren't really yours, that many of your achievements were just masks, that many of your relationships were false shelters, keeping you from facing yourself. And yes, in the beginning, it hurts. Everything you built on a borrowed identity begins to collapse. You feel empty, disoriented, confused. But within that silent collapse, something ignites, a tiny spark, timid, barely noticeable, but so real that you can't ignore it. It's your soul reminding you who you are. And from there, from that most intimate space, you begin to rebuild. Not like before, not to please, not to impress, but to be fully yourself, with all that entails, your shadows, your light, your contradictions, and your truth. As you continue on this path of returning to yourself, something deep begins to shift. in the way you relate to the world. You no longer live with the urgency of being understood. You live with the peace of having understood yourself. And from there, from that inner serenity, you begin to live more authentically. You become more mindful of what you consume, more aware of what you say, more intentional about who you share your energy with. You learn to set boundaries, not out of rejection, but out of self-love. You discover that solitude is not the punishment you once believed it was. It's a sacred space where your soul gains strength, where your creativity blooms, where your intuition sharpens. Because when you learn to be with yourself in stillness, everything changes. You no longer panic about emptiness. You no longer tolerate crumbs disguised as love. You no longer seek external validation to feel worthy. And from this new way of inhabiting yourself, you begin to build a different kind of life. The decisions you make are no longer driven by external pressure, but by an inner compass, quiet, but unmistakably true. You begin to feel what aligns with you and what doesn't. You don't need logical reasons. You feel it in your body, in your energy, in your soul. And while this might make you misunderstood by many, it makes you free. Free from conditioning, free from others' expectations, free to live from a place that is honest and real. And in that state, everything begins to align. Not because life is perfect, but because you no longer need it to be. You've learned that even chaos has its beauty, that even loss brings hidden gifts, and that every experience, even the most painful, is a teacher that brings you back to your center. As you continue moving forward on this path of reconnection, you begin to see, without forcing it, that your priorities change, naturally, authentically, because now your life is no longer shaped by what the world expects from you, but by what your soul is finally, wholeheartedly ready to express. What once felt urgent now fades into the background. The things that used to keep you up at night barely catch your attention anymore. It's not because you've become indifferent or careless. It's because you've come to realize that much of your suffering came from trying to control what was never yours to manage. Now, from a clearer and more conscious place within yourself, you begin to let go. You release the desperate need to have all the answers, to fix everything, to carry burdens that were never truly yours to bear. What starts to emerge is a sense of lightness, not because life weighs less, but because you're no longer trying to hold it all together through fear or the exhausting desire to please others. You begin to trust that everything has its own timing, that things arrive when they're meant to and leave when their purpose has been fulfilled. You stop resisting change. You stop begging for someone's attention. You stop trying to explain the unexplainable, because you finally understood that you don't have to fight for what is already yours by nature, your peace, your truth, your path. And in the midst of this shift, something profound happens. You begin to experience time differently. You're no longer in a rush. You no longer chase after a version of success that never belonged to you. Instead, you find beauty in simplicity, in moments of quiet, in the sacred pauses life offers. What once felt boring now becomes your refuge, and what you once searched for outside, validation, affection, purpose, now begins to emerge from within. Because you've discovered that the more you give to yourself, the less you rely on a world that never truly knew how to give you what you needed. As time passes, this connection to yourself deepens. It becomes evident in everything you do, in the way you speak, the way you walk, the way you truly listen to others. You no longer need to have all the answers. Just being present is enough. Just seeing people for who they truly are, without filters, without judgment. Your authenticity becomes your language, and without even trying, it begins to transform every space you inhabit. You start to notice that your presence has an impact, even when you say very little. Your calmness says more than any speech could ever express, and your ability to truly see another person without labeling them creates a space where others can finally breathe a little easier. But it's not because you see yourself as better. It's because you've been through the darkness. You didn't run from it. You didn't numb yourself. You stayed long enough to understand it, to learn from it, to come back with light. And that is one of the most powerful gifts a special soul can offer. The ability to return from the abyss with a message. Not everyone can do that. Many escape, distract themselves, deny the pain. But you chose to go through it. And because of that, you can now stand beside others without controlling them. You can understand without needing to be right. You can love without needing to own. You can guide without manipulating. Because you learned how to do those things with yourself. And now you have something real to give. You're no longer trying to save everyone. You're no longer desperate to be seen. You simply walk in alignment with what you feel. And that, in itself, is enough. Those who resonate will come closer. Those who don't will continue on their own path. And you'll be at peace with both outcomes. Because your goal is no longer to belong, but to be in harmony with yourself. That's when you begin to understand that your sensitivity was never a weakness. It was a misunderstood gift. That your need for depth wasn't a flaw. It was your soul calling out for something more. That your discomfort with superficiality wasn't arrogance. It was a sign that you were born to go beyond what's obvious, beyond what's common, beyond what most people settle for. And no, not everyone will get it. Some will say you're too much. Others will think you're making it all up. But you no longer need to explain yourself. You've made peace with being different. And instead of hiding it, now you honor it. Because in your difference lies your essence. In it lives your truth. In it pulses your power. And if all of this has resonated with you, if deep down, something inside you feels that it's no accident you're hearing this, then maybe the time has come. The time to stop hiding who you are. The time to start honoring your sensitivity as a strength. To see your uniqueness not as a burden, but as the gift it truly is. The world doesn't need more masks. It needs awakened souls like yours. So if this message has reached you, if it's reminded you of something your soul already knew, then I invite you to keep walking this path with us. Subscribe to the channel and join us as we continue exploring these sacred spaces where the mind, the soul, and consciousness meet. You're not here by chance. Something within you, something subtle yet powerful, led you to this video in this exact moment. And once you reach the end, you'll understand why. This is not just another coincidence in your life. This is a calling from your inner self, a quiet nudge from your soul that has been guiding you without noise or spectacle. Because transcending your old self is not a loud, dramatic transformation. It doesn't come with fireworks or grand declarations. It's something quiet, almost imperceptible, a silent journey that unfolds inwardly. It's not about becoming someone new with external changes. It's about shedding what never truly belonged to you in the first place. It's about remembering who you have always been at your core. This kind of transformation doesn't shout, it whispers. It feels like waking up one day and realizing you no longer belong to the identity you used to cling to. You no longer resonate with the same spaces, with the same conversations, or even with the same parts of yourself that once defined you. Carl Jung once said that true spiritual growth doesn't come from perfecting your personality. It comes from transcending it, letting go of all that is non-essential, all that was built as armor or illusion, to remember the essence of your soul, that quiet, unwavering truth that has always been within you. And one of the first signs of this shift is that you no longer identify with your past story. What once felt like a central part of your identity now feels distant, like watching an old movie. You can see it, even remember it, but it doesn't define you anymore. There's no longer any need to reject it, nor do you feel a wave of nostalgia for it. You feel calm when you remember, because now you can observe your journey without feeling the urge to explain or justify it. You no longer tell your story from the wound. You don't define yourself by what you suffered or what you achieved. You know it was all part of your path, but you also know with a deep, unshakable certainty that your worth is not measured by any of it. What happened no longer controls who you are or limits what you can become. And in the space once filled with guilt or pride, something new is born. A gentle freedom that allows you to see your past for what it truly is. The past. This emotional distance isn't about detachment. It's about integration. You don't need anyone to understand your pain anymore. You don't seek validation for what you lived. You no longer feel the urge to explain what made you who you are. You simply know. Your silence honors it. And that is enough. You begin to notice that the things that used to trigger you, that once stirred something deep inside, now pass through you without leaving a scar. Words that once pierced you now dissolve in your awareness. Relationships that once kept you anchored to outdated versions of yourself start to lose their grip. Not because you're rejecting them, but because there's nothing left in you for them to hold on to. As you transcend your old self, your emotions stop dictating your reactions. Not because you disconnect from your feelings, but because you learn to discern what part of you is responding from the present, and what part is simply repeating familiar patterns. Your inner narrative begins to shift. The thoughts you once repeated for survival no longer play in your mind. You're no longer seeking redemption. You're not punishing yourself for the person you used to be. You simply observe and move forward, as if something within you knows that every chapter before this one was necessary to bring you here. That deep understanding does not come from the intellect. It comes from the soul. And it is in that awareness that your old self begins to dissolve, not because it vanishes, but because you no longer live there. And when you stop inhabiting that old version of yourself, something inside you becomes lighter. You don't forget what you lived. You simply no longer need it as your foundation. Your choices begin to arise from a place that is freer, clearer, more aligned with who you truly are, not with the story you used to tell about yourself. Those self-definitions that once felt so solid, "This is just how I am," or "I can't change," begin to blur. Not because you fought against them, but because they no longer make sense to the person you are becoming. You no longer act out of a need to maintain a firm identity. You've realized your soul doesn't need labels to feel alive. Transcending your old self isn't about destroying it. It's about honoring what it once was and moving forward without dragging along what no longer serves you. You stop clinging to the persona you created to survive. You no longer feel the need to repeat emotional patterns or adjust yourself to fit into spaces you've outgrown. And the gentleness with which you let go, the ease with which you release without resistance, is the clearest sign that you are no longer vibrating from a conditioned self. You are beginning to live from your true self, the self that doesn't need to defend or prove anything, the self that simply is. And then something else happens. Your way of connecting with others begins to shift. And not because you planned it. It happens naturally. You start relating to others from a clearer, more honest, more unburdened place. You no longer seek in someone else what you've learned to give yourself. You don't look for a savior. You don't need to be seen to feel real. Your presence is no longer something you bargain with out of fear of being alone. In the past, your relationships were often built on need, on unspoken agreements rooted in pain, on unconscious emotional trade-offs. But now, there is space. Space to breathe. Space to pause before reacting. Space to observe without absorbing everything. When you transcend, you stop repeating the emotional patterns that once held you captive. Not because the world has changed, but because you are no longer making choices from your wounds. Your sensitivity no longer leads you blindly. Your giving no longer comes from emptiness. It arises from balance. And that changes everything. Your relationships stop being mirrors of what you lack and become reflections of what you already are. You no longer seek conversations to avoid silence or intimacy to escape yourself. You are finally able to share from a place of fullness, not from a sense of lack. And this is the essence of true transformation, when you no longer need to be anything other than what you are, when your past no longer defines you, when your emotions serve as messengers, not masters, when your story becomes a sacred memory instead of a living script. That's when you know you've begun to remember who you truly are. Even if someone doesn't resonate with you, there is no drama. There is no resentment or internal rupture, because your emotional stability no longer relies on someone else's willingness to stay. You now place your peace in someone else's hands. And that shift, that quiet, invisible shift, changes everything. When you begin to embody emotional independence, you discover a version of freedom that is not just liberating, but grounding. You're no longer running away, nor clinging. You're simply present. And that is enough. Your presence, once a background element of who you were, becomes your new language of love. A love that doesn't demand, that doesn't beg to be seen, that doesn't wait for reciprocity to feel real. It's a quieter love, deeper and more genuine. It doesn't scream through promises or perform affection to be validated. It simply is, steady, congruent, and peaceful. Not because it's trying to prove something, but because it doesn't need to. You begin to connect from a place of truth, not from a need to uphold an image or fulfill a role. You no longer invest energy in conversations that don't resonate, nor do you maintain relationships that exist only out of habit or history. Your energy, more refined and attuned, naturally filters out what doesn't align. And even if that process stings, it also brings relief. It brings clarity. Your old self used to choose from urgency, from fear of being left behind, from desperation to be accepted at any cost. But now, you no longer choose that way, because you've made peace with your own silence. You've learned to sit with it, to welcome it like an old friend. You know that the company of someone who doesn't truly connect with you can feel lonelier than your own solitude. So, you stay with yourself, even if that means walking away from what you once thought was love. You stop confusing intensity with truth, and drama with depth. You begin to recognize that what brings peace is what truly has roots, and what needs constant tension to survive is often just a mask for disconnection. You no longer try to force understanding. You don't need to convince anyone of your growth or justify why you can no longer remain in spaces that stifle your soul. Your vibration, the energy you emit simply by being true to yourself, begins to speak louder than any words. And without meaning to, it triggers reactions in those who haven't yet crossed their own thresholds. Some will drift away. Others will draw near, but from a different place. From honesty, not from need. And you will be at peace with both, because your center is no longer defined by your relationships. Now your center defines your relationships. In this new order, whatever stays, does so because it truly resonates, not because it is being forced to. This profound change in how you relate to others quietly reshapes your entire reality. What once felt essential now gently dissolves. And this is not rejection, it's clarity. Clarity born from having explored your own darkness so thoroughly that you no longer need to project it onto others. Your old self searched for mirrors. People who would confirm your worth, who would fill your empty spaces with half-presences and temporary comforts. But you are no longer available for that kind of bond. You've come to understand that a true connection doesn't consume you. It expands you. It doesn't ask you to betray your essence. It invites you to live it more fully. And when you begin to connect from this renewed energy, everything changes. Connections become subtler, more honest, lighter. The strength of a bond no longer lies in how loud or intense it is, but in its frequency, in that silent space where two souls can simply exist together, without explanation, without rescue, without clinging. In this new state, you learn to set boundaries, not from fear, but from love, self-love. And these boundaries don't divide. They bring order. They organize your energy, your time, your internal space. You no longer exhaust yourself trying to maintain what isn't growing with you. You don't stay out of fear of losing the little that's left. You've shifted into another vibration, one that doesn't apologize for evolving. You no longer feel the need to ask forgiveness for choosing your truth. And that, in itself, is proof that your old self is no longer the one guiding your relationships. Now, it's your soul. And your soul only chooses what nourishes, what uplifts, what reminds you of who you truly are. From this place, you begin to understand the true purpose of companionship, not to complete you, but to share who you've already become. You no longer seek shelter in others because you have become your own safe space. And this energetic self-sufficiency doesn't mean isolation. It means soul-level maturity. You stop carrying emotions that don't belong to you. You stop absorbing what others refuse to transform. You no longer fall into the trap of healing those who haven't chosen healing for themselves. You no longer dissolve in patterns where you once tried to be enough by becoming less of yourself. Because now, real love is not disguised sacrifice. It is presence without pressure, connection without chains. And it's within that clean, quiet connection that the most powerful things begin to unfold. You become a mirror of transformation for others, not because you intend to lead or guide them, but simply because your vibration reaches them. Your mere presence in a state of coherence starts to reveal the truths others have long avoided within themselves. Some will be thankful for this, while others may resist it. But either way, you remain at peace because your connection is no longer born from duty or obligation. It's rooted in the freedom of being authentically yourself. And it's in that space where you begin to understand something profound. The deepest, most meaningful bonds are not those that promise the most, but those that honor each other's evolution. That level of connection can only arise once you've walked through your own personal transformation. You've faced your old self, embraced it, and lovingly released it, not out of rejection, but with understanding. You finally see that your past version wasn't wrong or broken. It was simply trying to protect you the only way it knew how. But now, that protection is no longer necessary. You no longer need to hide behind a character or wear a mask just to feel worthy of love. You've stopped striving to be accepted. Now, you simply are. And that is enough. Without effort, without seeking approval, your essence begins to radiate more purely than ever before. And in that purity, you discover a new kind of intimacy. It's not about sharing every wound or narrating your journey in detail. It's about allowing yourself to be seen as you are, right now, without decoration, without pretense. You no longer carry the weight of old disguises. It no longer offends you to be misunderstood. It doesn't wound you like before, to be overlooked or left behind. That's because the source of your value no longer resides in the eyes of others. It lives within the relationship you've built with yourself. A relationship that was born out of silence, out of lonely nights, where you chose not to fall back into old patterns, out of days when you decided to hold yourself together even when nothing else was holding you. From that deep root, your old self gently steps away, not because you banish it, but because it no longer resonates with your current frequency. You can look back and honor that version of you as part of your story, recognizing that it did the best it could with what it knew, with what it had, and with what it believed was necessary to survive. But you're no longer surviving. You're creating. And in this state of conscious creation, there's no room left for the rigid structures of the past. Now there is space for softness, for subtlety, for that which vibrates without needing to shout. Your soul no longer needs to impress, defend, or prove its light. It simply inhabits it. And from that space, every relationship that remains or enters your life becomes a reflection of this new state of being. A state where love no longer feels like a burden, but a support that doesn't invade. Where sharing doesn't stem from lack, but from fullness. Where choosing someone or something isn't about clinging, but about honoring what aligns with who you are now. Your vision of life shifts in a way that can't be undone. You stop perceiving things the way you used to. What once looked unfair to you now reveals itself as part of a bigger design. What you once labeled as mistakes are now recognized as crucial moments of growth and transformation. You no longer speak to yourself as a victim. Your consciousness has expanded enough to recognize that even the most painful moments carried a greater purpose beyond the suffering. Transcending your old self doesn't just mean healing your wounds. It means seeing from a higher vantage point. Not because it makes you feel better, but because your soul can no longer look through the same lens. You've elevated internally, and that inner elevation allows you to perceive what once felt like chaos as hidden order, as silent teachings, as coded messages waiting to be understood. Even your relationship with time begins to shift. You no longer live in a constant state of waiting. You don't chase after what slips away, nor do you insist that everything must happen now. You start to live in harmony with the natural rhythm of your soul, a rhythm that isn't rushed by external pressures, but guided by inner maturity. In this rhythm, everything flows differently. Your priorities reorganize. What once seemed so important now fades, and the things you once overlooked now feel sacred. You begin to value silence. You revere the pause. You trust the process, even when you don't understand every step. You no longer need guarantees to move forward. You just need to feel aligned. And that's enough, because now you know the soul doesn't need to understand everything to keep going. It just needs to be in tune with what resonates as truth. This alignment with your truth becomes your compass. You stop making decisions from fear of making mistakes. You stop living from the urgency of fulfilling other people's expectations. Your choices are no longer reactions to a painful past. They're quiet acts of honoring your present. And that simple but powerful shift changes everything about how you experience life. You no longer force meaning out of every situation. You've learned that true understanding often arrives only after you've let go. And with that level of energetic maturity, you stop trying to control everything. You release the need to demand answers from life in the moment. You begin to live with more softness. And that softness doesn't mean weakness or passivity. It means power, refined and silent. Your strength becomes something inward and unwavering. You no longer feel compelled to showcase your process or prove your transformation to anyone. Your most honest silence speaks more than words ever could. And that changes how you walk through the world. You begin to move through your days with more awareness. The smallest moments, the brief pauses, the subtle gestures begin to feel meaningful. You're no longer chasing the next accomplishment, nor measuring your growth by what's visible to others. Now, you measure it by what you feel when you wake up in the morning, by the calm you sense when you're alone, by the peace that hums inside you, even when everything around you is moving. Transcending the old self means stepping beyond the limited identity you once clung to, living from a higher plane of perception without ever needing to leave your body. It's inhabiting a new frequency, a different state of being, without escaping from the world you know. It is no longer about reacting to what life throws at you, but about consciously choosing how you want to experience your reality. This conscious choice becomes the seed of transformation. It shifts the way you relate to every single part of your existence. What used to feel like a burden can now become an opportunity to be fully present. What once drained you now dissolves quietly and gently, without resistance, without resentment. And though this transformation may not be immediately visible to others, it is deep, enduring, and powerful. Because now you no longer rely on your circumstances to feel peace. Your inner peace is no longer dependent on whether things go your way or not. It flows from how faithfully you are living in alignment with your true self. And that inner fidelity, it's non-negotiable. It becomes your anchor, your center, your guiding truth. The old self measured its worth through goals achieved, through the approval of others, through applause and external validation. But you're no longer chasing after those illusions. You've discovered that true fulfillment doesn't come with noise. It reveals itself quietly, in the rhythm of your breath, in the way you choose your words, in the calm dignity with which you walk away from anything that no longer nourishes your soul, without causing harm or conflict. You begin to view challenges differently. They're no longer punishments or obstacles meant to break you. They are thresholds, gateways that your soul must pass through in order to awaken the dormant parts of you. You stop running from them. You face them with the inner knowing that they're not here to destroy you. but to unveil you. And that shift changes your energy at the most fundamental level. Your vibration no longer emits fear or doubt. It radiates truth, a truth that needs no defense, that speaks for itself in your eyes, your presence, your stillness. And it is in that moment of inner clarity that you realize the most significant change did not happen outside of you. It happened within you. The deepest transformation was never about rearranging your environment. It was about seeing life through the lens of your awakened soul, no longer through the filter of a self that needed fixing, proving, or pleasing. From that place of awakening, the ordinary becomes sacred, not because the world has changed, but because your perception is no longer tinted by lack or fear. Your gaze softens, it expands, it becomes filled with gratitude. You no longer need divine signs to believe, nor absolute certainty to move forward. You start walking with a slower inner rhythm, not because you've slowed down externally, but because you're no longer chasing things that were never meant for you. You grant yourself the freedom to choose differently, even if no one understands. You give yourself permission to not have all the answers, to not be in control, to leave space for the mystery to unfold itself, because you now trust that life is working with you, not against you. And in that sacred space, everything begins to align, not because you're doing more, but because you're resisting less. Your vibration becomes a magnet, attracting only what resonates with who you've become. You no longer need to force, to hold on, or to push. What is meant for you stays. What isn't simply fades away, peacefully and without drama. Even the difficulties that show up begin to take on a new shape. They don't vanish, but they no longer shatter you like they once did, because you're not approaching them from the same wounded version of yourself. You now face them with a depth that doesn't need immediate answers, but seeks true understanding, with a maturity that doesn't aim to win, but to stay in alignment. You meet life not with urgency, but with presence. You stop striving to be someone and start embodying who you truly are. And in that embodiment, everything changes. Not suddenly, not loudly, but completely. And that, though no one else may see it, changes absolutely everything. Because when your energy aligns with your truth, your reality begins to respond in kind. No chaos, no struggle, just synchronicity, just clarity, just that quiet whisper within you that speaks without words, that reminds you effortlessly of what you've always known. You're no longer who you used to be. You've transcended. And that transcendence doesn't announce itself. It is embodied, felt in silence, recognized only by the depth of your presence. There's no exact moment when it all clicks, no marked point of arrival. One day, you simply notice you don't react the same way. The things that used to hurt you now barely reach you. You no longer move through life driven by the urgency that once dictated your inner world. You've changed, not on the surface, but at the root. And that kind of change runs so deep, it doesn't need a name to be real. You feel it in how you carry yourself, in how you choose peace over performance. It shows in your ability to sit in silence without anxiety, to welcome uncertainty without losing your center, to live from what's essential without dressing it up. Your energy no longer scatters in 1,000 directions. It consolidates, it aligns, it becomes a current, one that moves not from pressure or expectation, but from a source within you that has no name and needs no explanation. This source, this guidance, comes from a connection to something deeper than your identity, your labels, your story. You no longer exist to maintain an image. You exist to express an essence. That essence that has always been with you, waiting patiently while you were busy chasing, proving, surviving, waiting for you to stop orbiting the same distractions. And you did. You let go. You chose differently. You walked forward. And without even realizing it, you transcended, not as an achievement, but as a natural outcome of choosing honesty over habit, of staying true to yourself when silence was harder than noise, of standing by your soul when turning back would have been easier. Now, that old version of you is no longer in control, and in its place stands someone real, someone calmer, someone more you than you've ever been. From this place of authenticity, a new chapter begins, not one where you react, but one where you respond with presence. You no longer chase approval because you've remembered your own worth simply by existing. You no longer seek belonging because your soul has remembered its eternal home was always within you. Life is no longer a race. It becomes a sacred unfolding, not because everything is perfect, but because you've stopped resisting what isn't. You welcome each moment, not with resignation, but with a peace that comes from reconciliation with the now. Your days are no longer a cycle of repetition. They become a living expression of your new frequency. Each word you speak, each gaze you offer, each step you take carries the imprint of someone who has chosen to live from their center. And that imprint, though invisible, leaves an undeniable impact, because a soul that has transcended its former self doesn't need to move mountains to transform the world. Its very presence is healing. It's a silent medicine, a reminder that living in alignment is not only possible, it is powerful. It shows others that healing is not a myth, that letting go doesn't mean forgetting, that becoming doesn't mean rejecting who you were. It means honoring the journey, understanding that every step prepared you for this one, this moment, this now. And now that you're here, your vibration speaks for you, and the world responds. If you felt this message resonate somewhere deep inside you, it's not a coincidence. Your soul already knew. It was simply waiting for you to remember yourself. Because transcending the old self is not an ending, it is a beginning. A beginning where you finally return to yourself fully, without fear, without masks, without weight. Carl Jung once said that enlightenment doesn't come from imagining figures of light, but from making the darkness conscious. And in those few words lies a truth that most people spend a lifetime avoiding. Because facing your darkness, acknowledging your shadow, is one of the most terrifying and liberating experiences a human being can endure. It's not a poetic metaphor. It's a raw, sometimes painful process of peeling back the layers of who you thought you were, only to meet the parts of yourself you tried so hard to ignore, suppress, or deny. And yet, if you're listening to this now, it's because something inside you has already shifted. You've crossed that invisible threshold where you no longer fear the dark corners of your mind. You've chosen to stop running. You've dared to look inward, to confront the wounds, the memories, the patterns, and the emotions that once held power over you. That is not a small step. That is the beginning of true transformation. You see, the shadow isn't something to be destroyed or erased. It's not your enemy. It is a part of you that has been waiting, often in silence, for your acceptance, for your love. Making the darkness conscious means learning to see it, to name it, and ultimately to integrate it. And when you do that, something incredible happens. The very parts of you that once felt broken become the source of your deepest wisdom. The pain becomes a teacher. The fear becomes a compass. The chaos, a doorway to clarity. You've walked that path. You've taken your shadow by the hand and said, I see you. I know you're there, and I'm ready to listen. That takes courage. That takes strength. And it's a journey most people avoid their entire lives. But you didn't. You made your shadow a bridge instead of a burden. And now, you move through the world from a place that feels more grounded, more truthful, more real. And if in some way this space has been a companion for you on that journey, if the words you found here have echoed something ancient and familiar within your soul, then know this: you're not walking alone. You're part of something much greater, something that transcends language and time. It's a collective awakening, a shared remembering. There are others, just like you, stepping out of illusion and into authenticity, choosing presence over perfection, choosing wholeness over avoidance. So if your heart feels called to keep exploring, to keep shedding the false and embracing the true, then walk with us. Keep going, because every step you take inward echoes outward. Every time you choose truth over comfort, darkness over denial, light is born, not imagined, not forced, but naturally revealed. You are not who you were, and you are not alone. And if these words have stirred something within you, if you feel that this journey resonates with the quiet truth you carry deep inside, then I invite you to stay close. This space was created for souls like yours, for those who are ready to walk a different path, one of depth, presence, and inner clarity. So, if you haven't already, take a moment to subscribe, not just to a channel, but to a movement of consciousness. Because each video, each reflection, each moment we share here is meant to support your journey and remind you of who you truly are beneath all the noise. Subscribe, and let's keep walking this path together.